Why doing good matters. Doing good to those who hate you accomplishes several important things. 1. It breaks down walls. Hatred builds walls between people. Goodness breaks them down. When you consistently do good to someone who hates you, it becomes harder and harder for them to maintain their hatred. Your kindness chips away at their defenses. 2. It shames the enemy. Not in a vindictive way, but in a convicting way. When someone hates you and you respond with goodness, it exposes the ugliness of their hatred. It holds up a mirror and forces them to see themselves clearly. 3. It points everyone watching to Yahshua. Your response to hatred becomes a testimony. People notice when you do good to those who have hurt you. They see something supernatural at work, and they start asking questions. How can you be so kind to someone who's been so cruel to you? That's your opportunity to point them to Yahshua. 4. It changes you. Doing good to your enemies isn't just about changing them, it's about changing you. Every time you choose goodness over revenge, you're becoming more like Yahshua. You're growing in character, maturity, and spiritual strength. 5. It stores up treasure in heaven. Matthew 6:19-20 reminds us not to store up treasures on earth, but in heaven. Every act of goodness toward your enemy is an investment in eternity. Yahshua sees, Yahshua remembers, and Yahshua rewards. Biblical example: Joseph and his brothers. One of the most powerful examples of doing good to those who hate you is found in the story of Joseph in Genesis. Joseph's brothers hated him. They were jealous of their father's favoritism, resentful of his dreams, and fed up with his apparent arrogance. So they plotted to kill him. They threw him in a pit, sold him into slavery to Midianite merchants for 20 pieces of silver, and told their father he was dead. They destroyed his life and broke their father's heart. Genesis 37:12-36. Joseph spent years as a slave in Egypt, then years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. He had every reason to become bitter, to plot revenge, to dream of the day he could make his brothers pay for what they'd done. But when famine struck and his brothers came to Egypt looking for food, Joseph, now second in command of all Egypt, had the power to destroy them. He could have had them executed. He could have let them starve. He could have revealed their crime and humiliated them publicly. He could have made them suffer as he had suffered. Instead, he did good to them. He fed them. He gave them grain to take back to their families. When they returned with Benjamin, he gave them the best land in Egypt to settle in. He provided for their families and their flocks, Genesis 45:9-11. And when they finally realized who he was and fell before him in terror, expecting judgment, Joseph said, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them, Genesis 50:19-21. Joseph didn't just forgive his brothers, he blessed them. He didn't just let go of revenge, he actively did good to them. He saw the bigger picture. Yahshua had used their evil intentions to position him to save nations from famine. Their hatred had been part of Yahshua's plan for good. That's the perspective we need. When we do good to those who hate us, we're trusting that Yahshua can use even their evil intentions for his good purposes. We're believing that his plan is bigger than our pain. Biblical example: David and Shimei. Another powerful example comes from 2 Samuel 16, when David was fleeing from his son Absalom, who was trying to take his throne. As David and his men traveled, a man named Shimei came out and cursed David repeatedly. He threw stones at David and his officials, and he shouted, get out, you murderer, you scoundrel. The Lord has repaid you for all the blood you shed in the household of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. The Lord has given the kingdom into the hands of your son Absalom. You have come to ruin because you are a murderer." 2 Samuel 16:7-8. David's men wanted to kill Shimei. Abishai said, "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and cut off his head." 2 Samuel 16:9. But David refused. He said, "Leave him alone, let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will look upon my misery and restore to me his covenant blessing instead of his curse today." 2 Samuel 16:11-12. David chose not to retaliate. He chose to let Yahshua handle the situation. He chose to do good by sparing Shimei's life, even though Shimei was cursing him and throwing stones at him. Later, when David returned to Jerusalem after Absalom's defeat, Shimei came to meet him and begged for forgiveness. David's men again wanted to kill him, but David said, "Should anyone be put to death in Israel today, don't I know that today I am king over Israel?" Then he said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king promised him on oath. 2 Samuel 19:21-23. David did good to his enemy. He spared his life not once but twice. He showed mercy when he could have shown judgment. That's what it means to do good to those who hate you, to choose mercy over revenge, to spare when you could destroy, to bless when you could curse. Biblical example: Elisha and the Aramean army. In 2 Kings 6, the king of Aram was at war with Israel. Every time he planned an attack, the prophet Elisha would warn the king of Israel, and the attack would fail. The king of Aram thought there was a traitor in his camp, but his officers told him, "Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom." 2 Kings 6:12. So the king of Aram sent a strong force with horses and chariots to capture Elisha. They surrounded the city where he was staying. When Elisha's servant saw the army, he was terrified, but Elisha prayed. And Yahshua opened the servant's eyes to see that the hills were full of horses and chariots of fire surrounding and protecting them. 2 Kings 6:15-17. Then Elisha prayed, "Strike this army with blindness." And Yahshua struck them with blindness. Elisha told them they were in the wrong place and led them straight to Samaria, the capital of Israel, right into the hands of the king of Israel. 2 Kings 6:18-20. When the king of Israel saw the blinded Aramean army, he asked Elisha, "Shall I kill them, my father? Shall I kill them?" 2 Kings 6:21. Here was the perfect opportunity for revenge. The enemy army was blind, helpless, completely at their mercy. They could have slaughtered them all. But Elisha said, "Do not kill them. Would you kill those you have captured with your own sword or bow? Set food and water before them so that they may eat and drink and then go back to their master." 2 Kings 6:22. So the king of Israel prepared a great feast for them. He fed his enemies, gave them water, and sent them back to their master. And the result? The bands from Aram stopped raiding Israel's territory. 2 Kings 6:23. Doing good to their enemies brought peace. Showing mercy instead of taking revenge stopped the cycle of violence. That's the power of doing good to those who hate you. It can transform enemies into friends, war into peace, hatred into respect. 4. Pray for them who mistreat you. Prayer is the highest form of love. It's the most powerful weapon in your arsenal. It's the ultimate act of surrender, the deepest expression of faith, and the most effective way to change both your enemy and yourself. When you pray for your haters, you're doing something profound. You're putting them into Yahshua's hands. You're letting go of the right to get even, releasing the burden of revenge, and trusting Yahshua to work in ways you never could. What the scripture says. Luke 6:28 says, "Bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you." Matthew 5:44 adds, "Pray for those who persecute you." Notice that prayer isn't optional, it's commanded. This isn't a suggestion for super spiritual people or a nice idea if you're feeling generous. It's a direct command from Yahshua to all his followers. And it's not just any kind of prayer. It's not praying for judgment to fall on them. It's not praying for them to get what they deserve. It's praying for their blessing, their transformation, their salvation. What should you pray for? When you pray for your enemies, what should you pray? Here are some biblical guidelines. 1. Pray for their salvation. The greatest good you can wish for anyone is that they would come to know Yahshua. Pray that they would encounter him, that their hearts would be softened, that they would repent and be saved. 2. Pray for their transformation. Ask Yahshua to change their heart, to heal whatever brokenness is causing them to act in hatred, to deliver them from whatever darkness is driving their behavior. 3. Pray for their blessing. This is hard, but it's what Yahshua commands. Pray for Yahshua to bless them, prosper them, show them favor. Pray for good things to happen in their life. 4. Pray for their needs. If you know they're struggling with something, health, finances, relationships, pray for those specific needs. Intercede for them as you would for a friend. 5. Pray for yourself. Ask Yahshua to help you forgive, to give you his perspective, to keep your heart free from bitterness. Pray for the strength to keep loving them even when it's hard. 6. Pray for reconciliation. If it's possible and safe, pray for the relationship to be restored. Pray for understanding, healing, and peace between you. Why prayer changes everything. Prayer for your enemies isn't just about changing them, it's about changing you. Here's what happens when you pray for those who mistreat you. 1. It softens your bitterness. It's hard to stay angry at someone you're praying for. When you bring them before Yahshua's throne, when you intercede for their well-being, something shifts in your heart. The bitterness begins to melt. The anger loses its grip. 2. It keeps you from plotting revenge. When you're praying for someone, you're not scheming against them. Prayer redirects your energy from destruction to intercession, from revenge to redemption. 3. It aligns you with Yahshua's heart. Yahshua loves your enemy. He died for them just as he died for you. When you pray for them, you're seeing them through his eyes, loving them with his love. 4. It releases supernatural power. Prayer invites Yahshua's intervention. You can't change your enemy's heart, but Yahshua can. You can't orchestrate their transformation, but Yahshua can. Prayer releases his power to work in ways you never could. 5. It protects you spiritually. When you pray for your enemies, you're taking the high ground spiritually. You're refusing to operate in the flesh, choosing instead to fight in the spirit. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Prayer is how you fight that battle. 6. It demonstrates faith. When you pray for your enemy, you're trusting that Yahshua is in control, that he's working all things together for good, that he can redeem even the worst situations. That's faith in action. The ultimate example, Yahshua on the cross. Yahshua modeled this perfectly. As he hung on the cross, beaten, mocked, and dying, he prayed for the very people who put him there. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Luke 23:34. Think about that moment. He was in excruciating pain. He was being executed unjustly. The people around him were mocking him, gambling for his clothes, celebrating his death. He had every right to call down judgment, to curse them, to let them face the consequences of their sin. Instead, he prayed for them. He asked the Father to forgive them. He interceded for his murderers. If he can pray for his enemies in that moment, the darkest, most painful moment of his life, surely we can pray for ours. If he can ask the Father to forgive those who nailed him to a cross, surely we can ask the Father to bless those who have hurt us. Biblical example, Stephen's prayer. The first Christian martyr, Stephen, followed Yahshua's example. In Acts 7, Stephen was brought before the Sanhedrin and accused of blasphemy. He gave a powerful speech recounting Israel's history and confronting the religious leaders with their rejection of Yahshua. The religious leaders were furious. They covered their ears, rushed at him, dragged him out of the city, and began to stone him. Acts 7:57-58. As the stone struck his body as he was dying, Stephen prayed two prayers. First, he said, "Lord Jesus, receive my spirit," Acts 7:59. Then, as he fell to his knees, he cried out in a loud voice, Lord, do not hold this sin against them. Acts 7:60. He didn't pray for rescue. He didn't pray for judgment on his killers. He didn't curse them or condemn them. He prayed for their forgiveness. And one of the men standing there, approving of Stephen's execution, was Saul of Tarsus, who would later become the Apostle Paul, the greatest missionary in church history, the author of much of the New Testament. Did Stephen's prayer play a role in Paul's conversion? We can't know for certain, but it's hard to imagine that Paul forgot the sight of Stephen praying for his killers as he died. That kind of love, that kind of forgiveness, that kind of faith, it leaves a mark. Your prayers for your enemies might be the very thing that leads to their salvation. Biblical example: Abraham prays for Abimelech. In Genesis 20, Abraham lied to King Abimelech, telling him that Sarah was his sister instead of his wife. Abimelech, not knowing Sarah was married, took her into his household. Yahshua intervened, appearing to Abimelech in a dream and warning him that he was a dead man, because Sarah was another man's wife. Abimelech was terrified. He confronted Abraham, who admitted his deception. Abimelech had every right to be angry. Abraham had put him in danger of sinning against Yahshua, had lied to him, and had caused problems in his household. But here's what's remarkable. Yahshua told Abimelech, "Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you and you will live." Genesis 27. Abraham, who had wronged Abimelech, was commanded to pray for him, and Abraham obeyed. Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife and his female slaves, so they could have children again. For the Lord had kept all the women in Abimelech's household from conceiving because of Abraham's wife Sarah. Genesis 20, 17-18. Abraham prayed for the man he had wronged, and Yahshua answered that prayer with healing and restoration. Sometimes we're called to pray for people we've hurt. Sometimes we're called to pray for people who have hurt us. Either way, prayer is the path to healing, restoration, and breakthrough. Biblical example: Job prays for his friends. We mentioned this earlier, but it bears repeating. Job's friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, spent chapters accusing Job, judging him, and adding to his suffering. They spoke falsely about Yahshua and falsely about Job. They were supposed to comfort him, but instead they became his tormentors. At the end of the book, Yahshua was angry with these three friends. He said to Eliphaz, "I am angry with you and your two friends because you have not spoken the truth about me, as my servant Job has. So now take 7 bulls and 7 rams and go to my servant Job and sacrifice a burnt offering for yourselves. My servant Job will pray for you, and I will accept his prayer and not deal with you according to your folly." Job 42, 7-8. Job had to pray for the very friends who had cursed him, accused him, and added to his suffering. And Job obeyed. After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. Job 42:10. Notice the timing. Job's restoration came after he prayed for those who had wronged him. His blessing came after he blessed his enemies. His breakthrough came after he interceded for those who had cursed him. This is a powerful principle. Sometimes your breakthrough is on the other side of praying for your enemies. Sometimes Yahshua is waiting for you to release forgiveness, to intercede for those who have hurt you, before he releases his blessing in your life. Biblical example: Moses intercedes for Israel. Throughout the book of Exodus and Numbers, the Israelites repeatedly rebelled against Moses. They complained, they grumbled, they questioned his leadership, they even tried to stone him. They were ungrateful, rebellious, and constantly causing him grief. And how did Moses respond? He prayed for them. When they made the golden calf and Yahshua was ready to destroy them, Moses interceded. But Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. "Lord," he said, "why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand?" Exodus 32:11. Moses prayed and Yahshua relented. When the people complained about the manna and Yahshua sent a plague, Moses prayed, and the plague stopped. Numbers 11, 1-2. When Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses and Miriam was struck with leprosy, Moses cried out to Yahshua, "Please, God, heal her." Numbers 12:13. And Yahshua healed her. When the people rebelled at Kadesh and Yahshua was ready to strike them down, Moses interceded again. "In accordance with your great love, forgive the sin of these people, just as you have pardoned them from the time they left Egypt until now." Numbers 14:19. And Yahshua forgave them. Moses could have let them face the consequences of their rebellion. He could have said, "They deserve what they get." But instead, he prayed for them. He interceded for those who opposed him, complained against him, and made his life miserable. That's the heart of a true leader, someone who prays for those who oppose them, who intercedes for those who rebel against them, who seeks Yahshua's mercy for those who deserve his judgment.
Family, thank you for joining us today for this powerful word in the Big Payback Series. I pray it blessed and challenged you to walk in the victory and love of Yahweh. If this message encouraged you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next teaching. And most of all, thank you for being here and for growing with us in the Word. May Yahweh bless you and keep you until we meet again. Shalom.